The Big 12 Experience Colorado Buffaloes 2024 team preview on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is giving away $15 million in Best Ball Mania 5. Sign up today using that promo code TCESGPN to claim your first-time deposit. Offer up to $250 bonus in cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCESGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm has the best AI and projections with the football models today. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That is the sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM today. And welcome everybody into the Big 12 College Experience Colorado Buffalo edition. Coach Prime. Year one was definitely an interesting year for Coach Prime. We'll recap it. We'll look ahead to the season. Year number 2 of the Deion Sanders era in Boulder. But first, I am Moneyline Mac, a.k.a. the former video coordinator for Bob Huggins and Frank Martin. And we're talking Big 12 football. And you guys know this guy because he was born in Provo, Utah. He's got family in Ames, Iowa. He lives in Morgantown, West Virginia. I do not think he has ties in Colorado yet.
Nope.
He is the co-host of the Ryan and Rush show, Rambling Rush. Rush, what is going on, man?
How we doing? Big episode ahead. Obviously, the Colorado, because of Coach Prime, is starting to become the national headlines, which could be good for the Big 12, of course. But, you have sometimes the fan in you gets unleashed. And they are easy villains to root against as well, too. So definitely can see it from either side.
Yeah, there's no really indifferent on this team. You're either kind of a pro Colorado or you're an anti Colorado. I know you could. I guess we are as in the middle as much as possible because personally, I'm not a fan of his style. I know you're not the biggest fan of his style, but we want them to be good for the Big 12. 4-8 last year. They started 3-0, as everybody remembers. They beat TCU. They beat Nebraska. They got lucky against Colorado State. I think that's safe. I think that's an accurate statement. And they were able to win in Tempe for win number 4. And then the wheels fell off because of their lack of depth. Rush, your overall thoughts in year number 1 of Coach Prime? They did elevate the program from 1 win to 4 wins, but just, I don't know. How do you sum up this first year?
So I think the first year ended up kind of exactly what everyone thought.
Yep.
The issue is they jumped off to a 3-0 start, and we started to put the cart ahead of us, cart before the horses, as they like to say. And, so you get everyone going. The national media is all over it. They want Coach Prime to do well. And then they the wheels fell off, and they only beat Arizona State, as you said, after that terrible game against Stanford when they were up by a lot, and the wheels fell under in that game as well. So what could have been a 5-7 team obviously ends up being 4-8. And I think going into that season, it's what everyone expected. But the way they did it made it seem a lot more disappointing than it was. I will say, obviously, with all the hype that and all the talk that Deion Sanders does, and I think, Ryan, we both agree, we don't care if you talk, but you just got to be able to back it up. I think this is a very pivotal year for them, and they at least need to make a bowl game.
Yeah, they do. And I think that's why the over-under win total set at 5.5. We'll go game by game. We'll talk about their offense, defense. Shout out to Derek in the chat. He is a Colorado Buffaloes fan himself. He makes a interesting point. They did lose a lot of single-digit games. I think everybody remembers when they were blown out. Oregon beat the absolute brakes off them. And then the other one was Wazoo when Shedeur went down. They did lose a one-possession game at Utah, but that was to the third string quarterback. lost tight games to UCLA, Oregon State, and Arizona. And of course, the famous Stanford game where they were up 30 and they collapsed, like you talked about. So I don't know. Do you think maybe they're due for a little bit of positive regression with the close losses? Do you put that kind of on the chaotic coaching style of Deion Sanders and firing his offensive coordinator in year one midway through the year?
Well, I think it's both. I think you can say, right, is we see this a lot in sports. When a team one year loses a bunch of one possession games, it tends to turn around the following year, which is what they really need this year. However, to say that there wasn't chaos behind the scenes either would just be wrong.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dion is someone that's been very successful in his career and his life as an athlete, obviously being a two-sport athlete, in media, in coaching till, we're still figuring out Colorado, but did well at Jackson State and other areas. So when you see someone in life that is very used to success and sustained success, then for them to go through adversity. I'm not saying obviously Dion hasn't gone through adversity in his life. I know he almost had his leg amputated. There's been issues there. I'm sure there's been other things he's faced that we don't know about. But it's not surprising that he wasn't very patient with everything going on, because like you said, it's last year was kind of how we expected, just not the way we expected it. So
Mhm.
when you go 3-0 and you're like, oh, we're on top of the world, and then stuff, teams make adjustments, teams watch you on film, and then they know how to adjust you. You don't have depth, that's going to come back around on you. So yeah, I thought a lot of his antics were from a lack of patience and being in a place I don't know if he's necessarily ever been in life. And so, you got to be wary there. A lot of his guys that transferred out, some of them didn't have great things to say about it. Obviously, he has his two sons on his team, and that can get a little weird sometimes. And, you want to protect your dad, but, your other players may have a point, and sometimes you have to draw lines in the sand, and that may not turn out well either. I think there's been, a lot of tension in that locker room as well, but it's only been year one, as we said. They're kind of going according to plan. It definitely makes year two, unlike you might see from other programs that are rebuilding, year two, because of Dion's actions and potentially his lack of patience, is he really twofold needs to back it up this year.
Yeah, usually when you go 4-8, you don't start Brett saying, "Well, we expect to be in the playoff next year." You could, I mean, I get that that's the goal, but I'd prefer a little more humble, especially from some of his players. But hey, that's their style. They're going to have a chance to back it up. Let's get on the other side real quick because the Sports Gambling Podcast is talking NFL. Deion Sanders, one of the greatest NFL cornerbacks of all time, if not the greatest, if not one of the great, if not the greatest athlete of all time. Well, go
Might
check
be.
out the NFL. Yeah, absolutely. NFL team previews with the code word that will be submitted with all 32 NFL team previews, and the lucky winner will get a $500 NFL Circuit future bet. Subscribe wherever you can get your podcast today in the SGPN app. All righty, let's talk. Little Colorado Buffaloes here. Offense, defense. The offense at the skill positions, I think we agree that they're as talented as anybody in the country. Obviously, headlined by Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. Now, they revamped their offensive line, which was much needed.
Had to.
They did lose a bunch in the portal. They did gain a bunch in the portal. Offensive side rush. What is your thoughts on these Buffaloes led by the coach's son, Shedeur Sanders?
Thoughts are, like you said, the specialty players are, in great shape. A lot of when you go into year two with a program, you tend to know the offense more, and you're already starting ahead of obviously the previous year. The question is kind of like you said, is this offensive line? They've put a lot of NIL. They've put a lot of time and attention into this offensive line. And you could have the greatest quarterback, greatest wide receiver in the world. But if you don't have a solid foundation at your offensive line, then, what are you? And so that's going to be the question too, is, a side effect of the transfer portal is, how are these guys going to mesh? You don't have the ability in college, at least those who heavily rely on NIL to, be together for a year, 2, 3 years and really get to know one another. So you do have to accelerate that process tremendously if you're going to really make over your team with a lot of new guys. So that's going to be the question there. They definitely have fantastic offensive linemen, but are they going to work well together? And when they do eventually face adversity, and we believe this is a solid Big 12 this year, they actually have a very tough non-con schedule. As we know, even their FCS opponent, what is it, South Dakota State,
Yep.
is not
North
a
Dakota
team to
State.
really. North Dakota State is not a team to be taken lightly. So they're going to go against some very talented teams, and if their offensive line can hold it down, they should be all right.
I think they downgraded at the offensive coordinator spot. I'm not a fan of the Pat Shurmur hire. I didn't understand that. I thought that one of the main reasons why they had success early was Sean Lewis's chaotic up tempo offense, and they wore down bad defenses like TCU, like Arizona State, like Colorado State in the end of that game. I'm not the biggest fan of how that whole situation went down. The other thing with the offensive line, and this is the problem with it, with my main thing with Deion. When the shit got hard last year, they did not waste any time to point the finger right at the offensive line to protect his son or protect Travis Hunter. They're great players, but there's a lot of favorites in that locker room, and
Of
I think the
course,
guys that have left that program, that's been one of the biggest complaints is his sons are on the team, but when the shit got hard, the offensive line got thrown under the bus, and then they ran him over again with the bus. I mean, they could not throw that offensive line under the bus as well. And yes, they had a bad year, but that's not how you conduct it. You conduct it in your locker room. And
I
I'm
agree.
just interested to see when it gets hard again this year. Do they point to the offensive line again, the defensive line, or do they handle it like professionals and within their locker room? History says they're going to throw whoever it is, not named Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter, under the bus, but we'll see. The defensive side, do you think they can hold up this year? And what's your thoughts on Hunter playing both ways? By the way, I I, I don't know if they can play him as much both ways. He's thin, man, and I know Deion did, but comparing you can't compare yourself to Deion Sanders. We just talked about he's probably the greatest athlete of all time. It's just I think it's a little bit arrogant to think that he's going to be able to stay healthy and upright for a whole season playing both ways.
Yeah, so I mean, history's not on their side for that. I mean, he was hurt last
Yeah.
year, but I think college is the level that where you can still kind of get away with playing a player both ways. I mean, you got to put the best guys out there. So I understand the logic behind it. Um, it's a grind football season either side of the ball. I mean, there a decision he may have to make is where is Travis more productive, and
Yeah.
put him on that side of the ball, or which side of the ball needs him the most. I think the offense could still be successful without Travis Hunter, where the defense might need to lean into him more, but that's going to have to be a game by game, a week by week decision. But I completely agree with you, is they can't rely him to play both ways, almost every snap for at least 12 games. It's just not, it's not sustainable. It's
Yeah.
in, if you do that now, I mean, even if you, I guess, get away with it. And I don't, these guys probably won't be back next year. They'll be in the NFL somewhere, and you won't have to worry about it again. But it to some extent, you are going to get worn down in a way that could affect you for the long term. So you just got to be careful, especially with football. And I know I'm a big proponent of this. I think you are too, Ryan. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in college where these guys aren't hitting as much in the offseason. And
Hmm.
I'm kind of against that. I'm not saying you have to do it as much as you did at one point, but you do have to condition your body to take hits, just like anything else. You got to condition for cardio. You got to condition for mental toughness. And so, you don't condition as well. His body's not used to taking many hits. He gets crushed at wide receiver and then has to go back out there and gets then crushed by a tight end or something. It's rough on the body doing it both ways. It's incredible, and it speaks to him as an athlete. And wherever he goes in the NFL, and no matter what position they put him in, I think he'll be very successful. But Travis Hunter shouldn't be your, I guess, your first go-to. He should be more of it treated as an insurance policy if you need him on defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. They got to be able to spell them some rest, man. They you can't play them both ways the entire year. And I know Derek Sanders is a cheap shot, but I hate to break it to you, if you don't think that they're going to get cheap shotted again with the target on their back, then you're mistaken. So I mean, that comes with the territory. As much as Colorado talks, I know Colorado fans act like they're just like everybody else, but the way that they've conducted themselves and talked all offseason, they're going to get cheap shotted again. That's just the reality of it. But I mean, they're going to have a chance to back it up this year. They did so for a couple games last year, but they were worn down because they didn't have the depth. And we talked about it. Maybe they could trick everybody for a couple games, but then when the cream rose to the top, they were completely outmanned at the end of the year, the last 2 months. So, all right, let's get over there to Underdog Fantasy, because you can play Best Ball Mania at 15 million in prizes. You can now use the special and boosts over there with the flex entries. We love Underdog. We're going to be giving away Underdog Fantasy Play lineup each and every week. Sign up today using the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $250 bonus in cash. Underdog Fantasy promo code TCESGPN. And we're also brought to you by Odds Jams. If you're interested in trying out Odds Jams, you can get a 7-day free trial today by using the link below. And you don't need to forget to enter the promo code SGPN to get 35% off with your first month of subscription. Oddsjam.com, promo code SGPN. Man, chat's alive and well for the Colorado Buffaloes. Shout out to 414 JEE. This podcast sucks. Well, you can leave, buddy. Nobody's making you watch the show, pal. Good luck to you, man. Let's go over to the over-under and the Big 12 odds. Pulling it up right now. Over-under win total 5.5 wins. The Big 12 futures 30-1, 251 to win the national championship. Rush, early leans here. I think it's right. I think it's right on.
I think that is the question this year, is that if can Colorado make a bowl game? And I think if they go 6-6, that is a remarkable feat. Like, and I know 4-1 JE, whatever his name is giving us a hard time. But look, here's the thing. Is from a Big 12 standpoint, we want Colorado to do well from a business wise. They're the only team getting national recognition to the extent that they are. Like, Colorado being bad is we're not against that. We want the Big 12 to survive all this conference realignment and moving forward. However, to just say like everything's great behind the scenes from what we've seen in history last year, that would be wrong too. They have the opportunity this year to move forward and correct all that. And like we said, we don't care. You can talk all day long. You can talk smack. I don't care, but you better be able to back it up. And so that's the only thing we're pointing out. I think the odds are correct. This does feel like, though, for Colorado, I think in year 2, where the Colorado program has been and going to a bowl this year would be, like I said, it would be great for them. It would be remarkable. However, in terms of the long-term future of this Colorado program, a lot of these guys are going to be headed to the NFL next year. And there's still questions on if Deion is long-term committed to this program, life beyond, his son and this crop of guys too. So while it would still be great, for them to make a bowl, like I was saying this year, it also kind of feels like they got to do a little more than go 6-6 as well. So they're kind of in a weird position right now where 6-6 on paper, seems good enough. Like, it seems like you're on the right trajectory to bring this Colorado program back. But is this also your Colorado's chance to do something big that they may not get again in the future? So it's that weird in between marker that they're at.
Yeah, and Derek's cracking me up in the chat too. 6 win, dude. They're over unders 5.5 for a reason.
I know it's not.
And you said that all their losses were by one possession. 3 out of their 4 wins were by one possession as well, including as a 24-point favorite against Colorado State. So they did have a little bit of luck last year too. They weren't unlucky. They just weren't that good. And this is also the problem with the whole Deion is just because Deion talks a lot and says we're going to the playoff doesn't mean that their team is actually that good. We think that they're somewhere in the middle. We don't think that they're going 2-10 like all the Deion haters. But just because Deion talks a shitload doesn't mean they're going 10-2. It's somewhere in the middle, as it usually is. And we'll talk about the schedule. There's 10 Power Fives on here. They're going into a new league. They have a rivalry against a team that they almost lost to as a 24-point favorite on the road. And they play a really good FCS team. This is a damn good this is a damn good schedule. So if you think they're going 10-2, more power to you. I mean, that's why fans stand for fanatics. But
let's for the Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. If they go to the playoff, man, I'll root for them. I'll be the first one to root for them. I'm just being realistic because they returned 10 guys off a 4-win team. Yes, they bring in talent, but this isn't fantasy football like we talked about last year. It takes coaching, it takes continuity, and it takes a good locker room. With money, NIL, that's harder to do than just saying, hey, we'll take this player from this program, this player from this program. And that's why they returned 10 guys. Phil Steele's experience ranked 48th. Bill Conley, 18th. So actually pretty good production coming back, all things considered. Mm-hmm. Rush, we talked about the non-con schedule. It's hard. North Dakota State, at Nebraska, at Colorado State. What do you think is realistic? I think 2-1. I think they're going to get out of this 2-1.
I do too. North Dakota State. I mean, that's actually a great opener for them. And if they handle that game pretty well, because wasn't the line at 8? Doesn't Vegas have the line at 8 for that?
Yeah, I like them. I think they're going to.
Yeah, I do too. I think they'll win that game pretty well. I think the game that they're going to have trouble at this year is that at Nebraska game. That's the one I'm concerned about for them. I think last year Nebraska was still figuring themselves out. Obviously, Nebraska has an interesting history, but Matt Rule is there now, and they came off that Minnesota loss week 1. Nebraska did, and then the wheels just kept falling into week 2. They were able to salvage it a little bit by the end of the season, but that game being at Nebraska, I feel like Matt Rule kind of has his guys going. I feel like Nebraska also had the game marked as soon as it was done last year. So, and then you're at Colorado State. I think they actually handle Colorado State pretty well. I know it's at Colorado State, but this last year felt like if there was an opportunity for Colorado State to beat Colorado, it was last year. And dumb of that coach not at least trying to go for 2 at the end of the game, especially when you're, at your opponents, the old rule there. So I think they get out of it 2-1. And I think, like we said, when last year, the kind of the lesson you learn is when you start 3-0 and you have all this, excitement and energy going, but maybe doing the non-con 2-1, you learn a little bit from that Nebraska game. It's kind of a humbling loss where you can take a lot from it and propel forward into the Big 12. It can, it's one of those things, obviously you don't want to lose, but it could be that loss that in the long term, it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I think Nebraska will beat them. Look ahead line. Nebraska's laying almost a touchdown. Nebraska's a better football team than Colorado. They finished.
Nebraska is Nebraska, though.
yeah. I will say you are right. If it is a close game, Nebraska could find a way to lose. I'll take Nebraska over Colorado, and I think, and I do agree. I think they will bounce back and win in Fort Collins. I think that they'll split those road games. If they were able to win at Nebraska, I think they dropped the Colorado State game. So give me a split there, 2-1 after week 3. Baylor, then at the bounce house UCF. This Baylor game's a huge game, man.
It is. I'm not looking. I learned my lesson from last year with Baylor. Aranda, I don't have confidence in him. I think the writing's on the wall there. I think they go back home, get some of that, energy from beating Colorado State at Colorado State, and I think they take it to Baylor. The following game at UCF, that game just kind of feels like a toss up. To me, that's a long road trip, and yeah, I would probably say you go 1-1 in that split. And what do we have them at 3-2 right now?
Yeah, 3-2. I mean, projection that they're going to be about a touchdown underdog at Nebraska and at UCF. This isn't just my quote unquote Colorado hatred. Like there's look ahead lines out for these games, and UCF is a better football team top to bottom than Colorado. So and home field. If that game was in Boulder, maybe I would lean to the Buffs, but UCF year 2 miles on 3-2 bye week. Kansas State at home. Old Big 12 rivalry. Good to get
Great
this
time
game
for a
back.
bye week too.
At Arizona, then Cincinnati at home. This is a hell of a stretch.
It is. It's not terrible though. This actually schedule well, as we've seen from the West Virginia side, it could be a lot worse. I think they upset Kansas State. I like that game. I think you get the bye at the perfect time. It's an old school rivalry, and we talk about rivalries, throw out the records, throw out anything that's going on. Anyone can win at any time. And then at Arizona, that might be a loss, but hey, the guys have history in the Pac-12 together. I'll do another 1-1 stretch there.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'll give them. I think they pulled the upset over K-State. K-State has West Virginia on deck, and they're coming off the Oklahoma State game. So we'll go an upset here. They get it done against K-State, and then they lose at Arizona. So that gets us to what?
4-3.
4-3. We think they beat Cincinnati.
Yes.
5-3.
5-3.
Okay, and this is. And
then you got a bye week, don't you? Yep. Then you have a bye week.
Yep.
So
do we think they go to? Do we think they go to Lubbock and win?
Dude, that's a tough game. Lubbock's a
I
hard
know.
place to play. I'm trying to look at this next stretch. These last 4 games at Texas Tech. No, they're not. They're not going to beat. I think yes. I think they actually lose the next 2 games. I think they lose at Texas Tech, then they lose against Utah.
They get whipped in the trenches, and Rising's back. At Kansas, is Daniels healthy?
Well, yeah, that's the age-old question. So what do we have them at right now? We have them 5-5 through this point.
2 to go.
Yeah,
it comes down to these last 2 for the over/under.
Yeah, I'll say they split these last 2. 6-6.
This is where coaching shows up in November. And I don't think Deion's at that level of the coach. I think he's in the bottom tier of this league in terms of coaching. Short prep, he's not out coaching Gundy. He's not out coaching Leipold. He's not out coaching Whittingham. I think they lose their last 4, 5-7.
I think that's fair. I mean, it's right around that over-under mark.
So you have them at 6-6. I have them at 5-7. So we split the win total. Everybody thinks we're crazy in the chat because Colorado's going 11-1. I love the fandom in some of these guys.
Hey, it's good for the Big 12, like we said. If that happens, we're not complaining either. Trust, I want anything that's, well, obviously I want West Virginia to win first and foremost, but put that to the side. I want what's ever best for the Big 12. I love this conference, and I want, it surviving all the conference realignment and being, a solid conference. We're just collecting evidence, right? It's just in predicting off of that.
The Coach Prime cult is a real goddamn thing.
Good for them, though. That's awesome.
I love the enthusiasm, man. We need more of that in the Big 12. Real quick, we'll talk ceiling and floor because the floor is clearly in play with Deion and the chaos environment that they have that I guess the Colorado fans want to have blinders to. They do have talent, like everybody's alluding to. There's a high ceiling with this team as well. This is probably the biggest variance team and that's why they're preseason 11. And you can make an argument, yeah, they could win the Big 12. You can make an argument that they could go 3-9. Let's lay it out on the other side, Rush, because we are brought to you by Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That is the sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM today. And we're also brought to you by Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back, better than ever. Circa Millions, 16 million guaranteed in prizes. Don't have a trip booked to Vegas yet? Well, get on over there. Ryan and Sean will be out there August 22nd through 24th. Use that promo code SGP15 to save 50% off your hotel room with the sign-up weekend today. Even have a deal with the footballcontestproxy.com to save you 50 with the promo code SGP as well. All right, Rush. By the way, everybody said that we were losing the fans with Texas and Oklahoma. There's more passion in the Colorado fan base. I like
I
these
love
guys.
it. I love it.
Now, when you guys are 3-6 though, or 4-6, make sure you come back in this chat as well. So don't be just showing up the first month of the season like you did last year. Then all of a sudden in November we can't find your ass. So, Rush, let's talk ceiling. Let's be positive. 9-3, 10-2. Can they get to that? I don't know.
10-2 is tough.
Is 10-2?
I'm going to go 9-3. 9-3. I think they can. Man, it's a long season. I'm pretty sold on Nebraska's beating them, but I could see them, an old Pac-12, winning those Pac-12 games. Yeah. Arizona, Utah, I'll add 2 there. So that gets you 8-4. And then, last game of the season, last couple games of the season, you never know injury-wise or really truly what you're facing. At the end, you can only predict it. It is the war of attrition. I'll go 9-3. Which would be fantastic.
Yeah. So if they go 4-1 in those first 5 games, and that means you go 2-1 on the road, and winning on the road in college football is hard. At Nebraska, at Colorado State, at UCF. If they can go 2-1 in that, I think that's best case scenario, and then you win your home games 4-1. K-State, in Arizona, Cincinnati, could they go 3-0 in that stretch?
K-State, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is I feel good about that Kansas State with Colorado. I think, like we said, it's an old rivalry throughout the record books when you play that. I think that's going to be a grinded out game, and it's at Colorado. And then, like we said, they have history with Arizona playing the Pac-12. Can go to Arizona, win that game. I mean, Arizona does have a new head coach. While we're pretty sold on their talent and their roster, I mean, kind of what Arizona did last year was, unexpected. And these things have a weird way of sometimes evening themselves out, especially with a new coach. They could go down this hill. And, I'm not really worried about them playing Cincinnati. Like I said, Troy and I talk about all the time that, we're not convinced on Satterfield, and he still has a lot to prove. Him at Cincinnati or him at Louisville. Yeah, I think they could go on a nice winning streak. And I think that is what will propel them to win a couple extra games that maybe they shouldn't, or those one possession games kind of from last year. Is that if they can get hot, they started, too hot early in the year, which obviously you want to win your games, but if they can get it going in that meaty part of the schedule, that's what could lead to a win against Utah, a win at Kansas, those other ones to get you to that 9-3. Who knows? Maybe that 10-2 spot.
Yeah. Maybe 10-2. I think you could lay out the case. You go 3-0, and then you go 3-1, and then 4-1 on the front end. Now, here's the floor. 3-9's in play. 3-9's in play. I hate to be the Debbie Downer. They're going to be an underdog most likely in 8 games. That's not my opinion. That's what Las Vegas, who, I mean, they don't just put out numbers for fun. And by the way, whoever was saying that Vegas odds doesn't mean anything, they set the over/under win total for Colorado at 3.5 last year. They won 4, so they barely got over the top. I think 3-9's in play. If there's a couple injuries, this 3-9's definitely in play. The depth of this team is not what everybody thinks it is, and the coaching. Why do we just assume that Deion's going to be able to outcoach guys in November, in October, and stay the course.
Yeah, he still needs to
Imagine,
prove himself there. I agree.
yeah, as soon as you start, the track record is they've gone on a 3-4 game losing streak. You start pointing fingers, you throw people under the bus, you fire your offensive coordinator. That happened. I hate to break it to people. So I think 1-2 out of the gate would be worst case. They're going to beat North Dakota State. Like everybody says, they have too much talent, in my opinion. Now, what if they lose to K-State at home? We gave that a win. That's a losable game. K-State wins 9-10 games every year.
Yeah, so Kansas State and Utah, I think those are the two to predicted to win the Big 12. So those are your toughest games, but I mean, hey, you get those at Colorado. Um, I, this schedule really isn't bad. I don't know if I can go 3-9. I think they're at least 2-1 out of the gate. Who knows? Maybe Nebraska can be Nebraska sometimes. Maybe they do start 3-0. I'm actually gonna go. I'm higher than you. I think the worst case scenario is 5-7 with this team. I really
Ooh,
don't think it's a bad schedule. I really don't. And they
I
are a
think
lot deeper this year, like the chat is saying and keeps reminding us, even though we said that at the beginning of this episode.
they could lose at Nebraska, at Colorado State, at UCF, K-State at home, at Arizona, at Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Those are my 9.
All right.
I I mean, these are the thing about the Big 12, you're going to be in a bunch of one possession games, and maybe you're on the wrong side of these one possession games. Their talent level is not what everybody in the chat is making it out to be. They're good at the skill positions. They're better on the offensive line, but remember, their offensive line was historically bad. They are going to be better in the trenches, but also, I think that people are assuming that the Big 12 is going to be down again. I think the Big 12 is going to be much better than last year. I think Oklahoma State brings back 19 starters. Iowa State brings back 18 starters. Kansas State brings back a bunch. UCF is going to be much better. They bring back a ton. They bring in KJ Jefferson. Arizona, they're coming in new as well. Utah's good as well. I think Texas Tech could bounce back as well. There's good teams in this league, and that's why a majority of them are going to go bowling. So, yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like we said, it's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems.
I agree. And I know there's a lot of expectations with this team. And like we said, love the fan base, love people getting fired up in the chat. That's actually a really good thing. And like we said, it only benefits the Big 12
Yeah.
there. But I do think, like we said, a lot of one possession games last year. I do think there is a tendency to bounce the other way this coming year where those one possession games fall more in your favor. But, we need to see, I still think, I know people aren't going to like it because, and that was my concern I brought up earlier in this episode. I still think 6-6 with trying to get this program back on track is a very good year.
A good
You're
year.
getting back to a bowl where they haven't been the team basically since the 90s, as we talked about. They've had a good year here and there, but this isn't that 90s Colorado team. And that's my main concern for the long term is they're like, oh, there's young talent on their team. Yes, there is. But there are concerns, and not just our concerns. This is talked about in the national media consistently. Is Deion Sanders going to stay at Colorado, when his sons leave? There's talk where, Jerry Jones may want him as the Cowboys coach. Like, those are very real, headlines. So while the young talent is there, and if you can develop it, great, and Colorado's around to stick out, the concern is that Deion doesn't have a long-term commitment to Colorado, and that young talent in the NIL era just disappears. So I get while the fans are being frustrated in the sense that it could be ticking here, but on the other side, it's that weird in between that they're in. You're trying to get your program back on a trajectory where they're in the thick of things every year, and going to a bowl this year is not a bad thing. That's a very good thing, and you're on the correct trajectory. Now, if Deion stays for year 3 and they do go to a bowl game this year, then we can start talking about 8, 9, 10 wins being the new standard for them. I just don't think that's the standard yet, and I think a lot of people are already holding them to the 8, 9, 10 win standard. And now you just can't do that yet.
Yeah, and I see people talk about how good Shedeur is, that he's the best quarterback in the league. I don't agree with that, but he is a hell of a player. I think he's a top 3 guy in this league. He can be the best guy on certain days, but I I still have seen some holes in his game where I think Cam Rising's better than Shedeur Sanders. I think Noah Fafita's better than Shedeur Sanders. I think Jalen Daniels, when he's healthy, can be better than Shedeur Sanders. I think Garrett Green, from a college football player, is better potentially than Shedeur Sanders. So he's in the top tier. He's a really good player. Um, but can they hold up in the trenches is the whole thing. Can their offensive line, you can have all the good skill players in the world, but if you can't block, you can't stop the run, you can't get after the passer, you're not going to win games, and you sure as hell ain't going to win games in October and November. So, all right, Rush, that's I think that was an in-depth Colorado preview. A lot of Colorado's great, man.
I love them. I'm glad.
You
I think
gotta
they have
have
been.
it. You gotta have a opinion on them. You gotta have an opinion on them. I mean, everybody. I mean, you would think that this is goddamn Georgia and Ohio State in the chat. I love it. I love that. I love this passion from this fan base, and we welcome you to the Big 12. We're happy that you're back. You're back home.
Oh yeah,
You're back where you belong. And yeah, we like what Deion brings to the Big 12 from a branding standpoint. National recognition. They play in
absolutely.
prime time against Nebraska. They play in prime time against Colorado State. They play in prime time against everybody. So they got to put their money where their mouth is. They didn't last year. As much as people don't want to admit it, they did not put their money where their mouth is. But Rush, any last thoughts before we get up on out of here? We got Houston up later in the week. I don't think we're going to get as passionate a Houston podcast as we have for Colorado.
I think we're still looking for some of the Houston fans for even from last year. No, appreciate the chat. As always, glad to have you back in the Big 12. It's going to be a fun season. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And glad my connection was able to hold up at the beach. Shout out to the chat. You guys were alive and well. Shout out to all the Buffalo fans out there. Go check out the college football experience. Colby's on the over, but he's a Colorado fan, so of course he's going to be on the over. Go check out all 134 team previews. Go check out the college basketball experience. Tad Boyle and company. They're coming off a NCAA tournament appearance last year. Had 3 guys drafted in the NBA. You're part of the best damn league in the land, baby, the Big 12. So appreciate you guys rocking. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. We'll be back later in the week to talk Houston Cougars. Oh, and go check out the Ryan and Rush show. All West Virginia Mountaineers, baby. Let's go Mountaineers. We will see you guys later. He is at Rambling Rush. I am at Moneyline_Mac. We are the Big 12 College Experience, and we are out of here.